Hi, my name is Henrik Österblom, and I'm here to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities with management of marine resources. I think most of us by now know that there's an increased demand for marine resources, and the question is, can we draw a line somewhere, and where do we draw a line for how much we use these resources? I want to use the interactions between seabirds and fish stocks as an example. If you think about this as a marine ecosystem, this is the way I think many people perceive a marine ecosystem. There's seabirds somewhere in the picture, and then there's a free horizon. And there are very many different species of seabirds. There are alcids, like the common murres or common guillemots. The very close relatives, the puffins that you find pretty much all over the northern hemisphere, as you do with the murres. And there are, of course, penguin, the southern hemisphere equivalent of alcid, and a species that very many people are familiar with. These species all have something in common. They feed on small, fat, pelagic fish called forage fish. They form dense school, and they dive underneath the surface or have different strategies to obtain this prey. And different species all over the world feed on different resources, but they're sort of the same interrelationship, the same type of species interactions. A lot of individual studies all over the world had looked at the relationship between how much fish is there in the ocean and how many chicks are the seabirds producing. And hardly surprising, a lot of studies have found that when there's more fish in the water, there's more chicks produced. And if you have a limited number of data points from a limited number of study sites, limited number of years basically, you get the sense that there may be some linear relationship to this interaction. So I was part of a big group of people who had studied seabirds, fisheries, interactions all over the world, different species, different resources that they're feeding on. And we put all these data together. Some had time series that were 25, 15 years old. And we put all this data together. And these were species from the Southern Ocean, California, Alaska, Northern Norway, the North Sea, South Africa, and New Zealand. And what is really interesting when you put all this data together is that you don't get a nice linear relationship, you get a nonlinear relationship, what biologists call a Halling type 2 response. And in this type of relationship, there's a critical tipping point somewhere. Maybe somewhere around there. So when fish resources are above this tipping point, you have stable breeding output from the seabirds. And when the fish resources are pushed below this threshold, you get a dramatic drop in seabird breeding success. We put together all these data, as I said, and when you look at all these different species, you get the similar relationship regardless of species and regardless of ecosystem. And we did this because we were able to normalize the data, so we put all the data together so they were comparable, and we can really identify this critical tipping point for all the different ecosystems and for all the different species. And this has enabled us to come up with a rule of thumb or a sort of a guiding principle for how we can manage marine ecosystems in a sustainable way. How can we sustain seabird breeding output and, of course, seabird populations in the long term? And we also think that this relationship may be applicable also to marine mammals. So this is a nice way to draw a line and to say that maybe we should try to sustain resources above this critical threshold in order to maintain the structure and function of marine ecosystems. And of course, this is a big challenge now. We have increasing demand for forage fish in fish meal for meat and aquaculture production. We also have some changes in marine ecosystem of predatory fish stocks coming back, demanding these resources. So we are very much aware of the challenges, but I think for the first time we have a very nice rule of thumb that we can apply for marine management if we want to sustain these resources in the long term. Thanks very much.